FlySAFair says it expects the high prices to remain elevated right into the holiday period and only expected to moderate next year. Kirby Gordon is the Chief Marketing Officer with FlySAFair, and he joins us now to explain what they are seeing as a major player in the aviation sector in South Africa. Kirby, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. The current state of ticket pricing ahead of the December travel period has got a lot of people actually worried. Why are ticket prices as a player in this field so high when you compare them to what was happening in pre-COVID, for example?
So I think there are a couple of factors at play at the moment that bear relevance to this. The major issue that's overarching at this stage is the fact that we are experiencing a market supply constraint relative to the demand. So passenger aviation in South Africa anyway, has recovered to about 75% of the 2019 numbers. We used to see about 1.6 million seats on the local market every month, and we're back to about 1.2, which actually plugs the gap that was once left by I think just after that departure, that particular month, we went down to about 900,000. But the reality is, as much as we've been trying to add as much capacity into the market as possible, the demand has continued to grow and has outstripped that supply. So even, FlySAFair, for example, will be flying 1.5 times this December what we did last year, December. But obviously the demand is still greater than that. And so what we're seeing is partly an increase in fares, but obviously also just a lack of availability of seats. I mean, I think over particularly the last 2 weeks with the school holidays, with a lot of demand in areas like Cape Town for the Cape Town Marathon, I mean, you just weren't actually able to get seats on any domestic airline for 3, 4, sometimes even 6, 7 days out, which is quite an unusual situation.
You've certainly, as an airline, taken the opportunity that gap that has been left by the demise of many other airlines, and added 11 new routes, and you are saying that you're going to add capacity. What makes you say that the prices, the airfare tickets, are expected to decrease by February 2023?
So it's absolutely that dynamic of supply and demand. We see that the shortfall in the market at the moment is for about 400,000 seats. That will get us back to what we had previously had, which should be a pretty good indication of where the supply by volume of seat numbers meets the demand. Obviously, the actual price point is going to be interesting to see where that ends up in the long run, because as much as the market will be back in equilibrium from a supply and demand perspective, we naturally have a lot of factors that we still have to consider in terms of inflation over the last 3 years, and of course now very significantly the changes in the price of oil, and of course South Africa's access to particularly jet fuel, which is also a changing dynamic since we no longer refine in this environment. So it's going to be interesting to see how that adds up. But the reason we're predicting that decrease in prices will come was because that is when we see the supply actually starting to get back into the market. So we've committed to adding at least 6 aircraft to our fleet of 25 before the end of April next year. They won't all come in at once. They need to be phased in. Similarly, we're very aware that a number of other airlines have done similar things. So as the months progress now, as the weeks progress, we'll start to see those planes come online and the seats consequently being sold by the various airlines. And so we reckon that by the sort of beginning of next year, certainly by the last 2 weeks of January probably, we would have had a dual effect of additional capacity put into the market from new aircraft that have been brought in, but by the same token a natural kind of lowering of the demand, because after that December peak season, which is always crazy, we do see a natural kind of lull in demand. So we predict that at that point we're going to start really hitting that equilibrium point from a pricing perspective again.
Kirby, any advice for the public as to how to navigate the next couple of months to ensure that they get the best prices for air travel?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing is if you're looking to travel in December, buy your ticket immediately. There are not going to be any specials. I don't think anyone will be putting any on. And from this point forward, as those, it stands to reason the first seats on an aircraft are always the ones that sell at the best prices. And as time goes on, as we reach closer to departures and as people buy up those seats, they become incrementally more expensive on the pricing model. So the idea is that if you are intending to fly, buy those tickets now. And if you're uncertain about your times or your dates, it's actually probably probably worth your while to still buy them now when they're cheaper, but look at perhaps the alternatives that offer insurances or some additional flexibility that could save you in the long run, even if you do have to make your changes. The other advice that we always offer is, again, particularly if you're looking to travel in the peak December season, see if you can be clever with the way that you might plan your annual leave and your travel dates. There are very specific dates which are always very, very over demanded. So around the 16th of December, we know most businesses close. There's a public holiday then. So that will always be a very, very high peak period. So if you can be a little bit more creative about how you plan your travel dates, you might well be able to actually get a better deal. And specifically, actually, what we kind of notice as a trend is a lot of people tend to stagger their departures to get a better price, but everyone wants to come home at the same time. So if you can look at the tail end of your holiday break and try to spread out your travel dates over that period, chances are you could get a better fare. And then the third bit of advice is probably just to take a look carefully at your baggage. It was something that we had started, but at this stage, pretty much most of the carriers that are contesting the market have the option for you to purchase your luggage separately. So obviously buying a ticket without luggage is effectively a saving. But people often sort of default to the idea that they need to buy a bag for absolutely every passenger. If you're a family of 4 and you have small children, for example, it's quite likely that mom and dad can take bags along with them and actually just pack in for the kids into their own suitcases and still get away with it. So there are little tips and tricks that you can play to make sure that you get the cheapest price as well.
Kirby Gordon is the Chief Marketing Officer at FlySAFair, saying that they expect those high ticket prices that we are seeing of late to actually moderate and come down by February next year. Thank you very much, Kirby, for your time.